All right, so this video is going to be for Lesson 4, Chapter 2. We talked about partial quotients today in math class. So I have this problem I want to start with. 775 divided by 23. The 775 would be my dividend, and the 23 would be my divisor. And I am looking for my quotient, which is the answer to a division problem. When I do partial quotients, I like to extend my house down. And then I like to create another column by putting a dashed line. And this column here is where I'm going to put my partial quotients. All right, so my first step is to think to myself, what number can I multiply by the divisor, so the 23, that will get me close to the dividend, the 775. And a really good tip or a place to start with is starting with multiples of 10. So your 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, because those are really easy to do math in your head with. So I'm going to first start off with, I think 23 times 10 would maybe work best to start us off. So 23 times 10, and that is 230. I know that's pretty close. So then I'm going to subtract. That's my next step here. So I do 5 minus 0, that's 5. 7 minus 3 is 4. 7 minus 2 is 5. And I'm not done. I am not done because this number is not smaller than my divisor. So now I need to ask myself again. I'm going to repeat my steps. I'm going to say 23 times what number that is a multiple of 10 will give me an answer really close to 545. So I'm going to do 10 again. And I already know from doing the work that 23 times 10 was 230. And then I subtract, and I get 5, 1, 3, 315. Now before I move on any further, let's talk about this partial quotients column. So I'm always going to be multiplying my divisor by a number, and I'm trying to use multiples of 10 to keep it easy to do the math in my head. So these multiples of 10 are now called my partial quotients. So I'm going to pull those numbers out. I'm never going to pull the divisor out that I'm multiplying by. I'm just going to pull those partial quotients. So I'm going to pull the 10 out of this one and the 10 out of this problem here. So now let's keep going. I have 315. So I already know that 23 times 10 got me pretty close to that. So let's do that again. 23 times 10, that was 230. And then I need to subtract. 5 minus 0 is 5. Regroup. This becomes an 11. This becomes a 2. So this would be 8. So 85. And 2 minus 2 is 0. So now I'm going to pull out my partial quotient from 23 times 10. And that was 10. Now I need to ask myself, what number times 23, my divisor, is going to get me really close to this 85? Well, I think I could do 2. 2 is pretty easy to do math in my head with. So 23 times 2 is going to give me 46. So I'm going to write that answer down here. And over in this column, my partial quotients column, I'm going to write my partial quotient, which was 2. And then I need to come back over here to subtract. So let me regroup. 15, that becomes a 7. So that becomes a 9, and that becomes a 3. So I have 39. Now I need to ask myself again and keep repeating these steps until this number, this difference, is less than my divisor. So I need to say 23 times what number is going to get me close to 39 without being too large. Well, I already know 23 times 2 is 46, and that's too big. So the only one that would work would be 23 times 1. I'm going to pull my partial quotient out. And then I need to do my work over here with the division problem. So 23 times 1 is 23. Then my next step would be to subtract. So that's going to give me 6, and that's going to give me a 1. Now, this number, the 16, is less than my divisor 23. So I think I'm done. I really have nowhere else to go because if I have 23, I can't even multiply by anything else because the 1 gave me 23, and that's going to be too large. So now to figure out my problem, I need to figure out my answer, my quotient, I need to add up all of my partial quotients over here. So I'm going to put a plus sign, And I'm going to add up all my partial quotients. So 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30, plus 2 is 32, plus 1 is 33. So this right here is going to be a piece of my actual quotient. So I know that my answer is going to be 33, but then I have this left over here, this 16 left over. This is actually now going to become my remainder. So my actual quotient is going to be 33 remainder of 16. Let's do another problem together to try and get a better understanding. So let's do other paper. 425 divided by 5. 425 divided by 5. I'm going to extend my house down, and I'm going to add that extra column for my partial quotients. So my partial quotients. All right, so now I need to think. My divisor is 5, so I'm going to keep that here. I'm going to say 5 times what number is going to get me really close to 425? Well, I think it's safe to say I should start with a larger number because my mind right away, I went 5 times 10, that's 50. 5 times 20, but that's not big enough. I need to think bigger. So if I go 5 times 100, that's 500. So what if I choose to say 5 times 80 instead, or 5 times 90 instead? Well, 5 times 90 would give me 450, but 5 times 80, so I would do 5 times the 8, so that gives me 40, and then I have 1 0 left, so I add that 0 on, and that's pretty close. So this 80 here would become my partial quotient, so I'm going to put that over on the side. So now I need to come back to my problem and I need to subtract. So 5 minus 0 is 5, 2 minus 0 is 2, 4 minus 4 is 0. Now I need to repeat my steps and say 5 times what number gets me really close to 25 without being too large? Well, this one's easy. This is a basic math fact. 5 times 5 gives me 25. So this 5 that I just multiplied my divisor by becomes my partial quotient, so I'm going to write it over there. And now I need to come back to my problem and subtract. So to find my actual answer, my actual quotient, I need to add up my partial quotient. So I'm going to put a plus sign here. And I know that 80 plus 5 is 85. I have a 0 here, so I have no remainder. So this that I added together now becomes just my quotient. I have no remainder because I have nothing left over. Let's do one more problem. Let's do 1,450 divided by 32. So remember, I said I like to extend my house down, and then I like to add that extra column for my partial quotients. So that way I'm just staying nice and organized. So partial quotients. Just so I'm staying organized. So I'm going to start off by saying 32 times what number is going to get me close to 1,450. And I want to keep it as a multiple of 20, to kind of, a multiple of 10, to kind of keep it easy in my head to multiply. So 32 times 10 would give me 320. I could do that. Or I could try 32 times 20. 32 times 20 would give me 640. So I'm just going to try that. Let's try that. 32 times 20. I'm going to pull out the 20 because that's my partial quotient. So 32 times 20 gave me 640. So my next step would be to subtract. So 0 minus 0 is 0. 5 minus 4 is 1. I need to regroup. 14 minus 6 is 8. So I have 810 left. So I need to repeat my steps. So I'm going to take my divisor again. And I'm going to say what number times my divisor, my 32, will get me close to 810. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do 20 again. So I'm going to pull my 20 out over here and put in my partial quotient column. So 32 times 20, I already figured that out. That equals 640. So now I'm going to subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0. Regroup to an 11, and then a 7. So 11 minus 4 is 7. 7 minus 6 is 1. Okay, now I need to repeat because this difference is still greater than my divisor of 32. So I need to now say, what number can I multiply by my divisor, the 32, to get close to 170 without being too big and without going over? Well, I could try 32 times 10, but that's 320. So other things could be easy in my head. I could do 32 times 9. That's 288. That's too big. I could do 32 times 8. That's 256. That is too large. I could try 32 times, let's try 6. 32 times 6 would give me 192, which is still too big for this. So what if I tried 32 times 5? 32 times 5, pulling out my 5 to the partial quotients column. 32 times 5 would give me 160. And then if I subtract, that'd be 0, 1, and 0. And that becomes less than my divisor, which I know that I'm done. So to find my answer, I'm going to add up my partial quotients. So 20 plus 20 is 40, plus 5 is 45. So this 45 now becomes my quotient, but I still have this 10 left over, and this 10 left over is telling me that that is my remainder. So my actual answer is 45 remainder of 10.